I'm Kate Vredenburgh. I'm a philosopher, still a PhD candidate, and my project is on explanations of automated decision making. So as a way into the project, imagine the following. So you're a law-abiding chief cashier of a bank who's suddenly arrested on your 30th birthday. So you wake up in your bedroom, there's a policeman there, he tells you you're under arrest, you're like, well, for what? And this person says, someone later will tell you. And you say, okay. And he says, look, I'm going to take you to my boss. And you say, okay, well, I understand I'm under arrest. What am I under arrest for? And they say, someone later will tell you. And you move through this entire bureaucratic system, never being told the reasons why you've been arrested. You're eventually, at the end, executed, and your story ends. So, fortunately, this is not, in fact, any of you. This is Joseph K., a character from Kafka's novel, The Trial. But what The Trial really brings out is the ways in which early 20th century critics of these bureaucracies were very alive to the ways that these massive regulatory apparatuses can be totally opaque to the people subject to them, and the ways in which these kind of facts about opacity can make them really deeply unfair. And so that's what my project focuses on, the connection between opacity and unfairness as raised by algorithmic decision making. So, I think if you look around at just the kind of myriad ways in which opaque algorithmic decision-making systems are embedded in our sort of everyday decision-making in institutions, some of which some projects have already touched on, it's really shocking. So, these complex proprietary AI systems are used to do credit scoring, find, screen, and interview job applicants, so it's often only when you get to the final stage of an interview that you'll be interviewed by a human being. Diagnose and treat patients, predict recidivism, match students to schools, and so on and so on. So in response to this, I'm basically sort of like very deeply concerned that we've been overlooking something important. Something really important that the Kafka story brings out, this deep connection between the fairness of our institutions and having explanations, so not having opaque institutions. So what am I proposing? In my project, I'd like to think about arguing for a really important, central, and I think overlooked right, what I call the right to explanation. So I want to take this right really seriously and kind of put it up against or alongside our classic human rights, our classic liberal rights like freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and so on. And I think the reason why this right really gets going is that when you think about what makes institutions fair, they're often fair because individuals are able to do certain things, engage in what I call informed self-advocacy. So they're able to contest decisions if those decisions are made on the basis of mistaken information. They're able to know what the rules even are and to conform their behavior to the rules in order to get the outcomes they want. So, they need to know, okay, how do I get a loan in order to get an education? Things like that. So because this ability to engage in what I call informed self-advocacy is so key for institutions to be fair, and because, and this is the kind of second step, having explanations of decisions are really key for that, I think that we should recognize a right to explanation. And the second point, so part of the project I'm really interested in working on is, okay, in more practical and legal terms, what would this right consist in? So two ideas that I've floated around. One, kind of free expert consultation, so along the lines of people in the legal system who are kind of advocating for a civil Gideon, so that people in civil cases should also have access to a free expert lawyer, not just these high-stakes criminal cases. I think maybe so too with a variety of cases of algorithmic decision-making. And a second proposal that's not up to, that I didn't come up with, but has been floated more generally, is this idea of public algorithmic impact statements. So it might be that when a company is, say, doing background checks that are going to be used in job settings, they might have to provide a public justification of the algorithm they're using and say, look, here was our data gathering process, and here's why it's fair and accurate. Here are the goals that the algorithm is meant to achieve, and here's how it achieves it, and so on. So these kind of things are open to public scrutiny in a way that makes them, hopefully, importantly fair. Why should this intervention matter? So one thing is, I think, arguing for right, as we know, is really powerful. So there are all kinds of trade secrecy considerations that constrain a lot of us from knowing what's going on. If there's a right in the arena, trade secrecy doesn't matter, right? Because our fundamental rights are more important. than trade secrecy considerations. And I think this also will get us to thinking about institutions and kind of away from this paradigm of focusing narrowly on some properties of algorithms. Feedback and resources, I would like many. So any legal scholarship on things like Civil Gideon and other movements to expand free access to experts, maybe kind of union building movements and these kind of things. Social scientific work on behavior in institutions that requires explanation or use automated decision aids. So I'm really worried about the kind of like perverse incentives that might be created by demanding that people give explanations. Technical work on automated audit trails and automated explanation aids. And then legal and political philosophy of all kinds on when explanations is required for a process to be fair. And then finally some real world examples of people actually building explanation aids, tools, advocacy examples, people that are already working on this.